Good morning. Welcome to Podup, Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Thursday edition. Shane Matthews here. We got a great show lined up for you. In a second, we're going to be joined by Brent Beaird from First Coast News over in Jax, also part of College Sports Today. Second half of the program, we have former Gator coach Jim Collins join us, longtime assistant of Steve Spurrier. Just some news and notes around the sports world, and we'll dive in a little bit more with Brent Beaird on what's going on with college football. But first NFL player has tested positive for the coronavirus, center Brian Allen for the LA Rams. He seems to be doing fine. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. The draft's next week. I think that draft, even though it's all going to be done from people's basements and their houses and this, that, and the other, I think the ratings are going to be all out of control because people want to watch some type of sports. I know I'll be watching it, even though I hate watching the draft, never really have. But I'll be tuned in because it'll be a somewhat live event. So having said that, we're going to jump straight to the Titan MR hotline, and we're going to be joined, as I mentioned, from First Coast News over in Jax, College Sports Today, Heisman Trophy voter Brent Beaird. Brent, good morning. How are you?
Guys, I'm doing well. It's a wonderfully cool morning here in the Jacksonville area, so we're quite excited about that. And even though that we thought we'd have spring games this weekend, we don't, but there's still much going on in the world of college football.
Well, it really is, Brent. And first, let's go ahead and yesterday, I think Vice President Pence talked with some of the commissioners in the NCAA, and I don't know if it's good news, bad news, or what have you. I look at it as somewhat bad news. Give me your thoughts on what happened in that conversation.
Basically, he met with the College Football Management Committee. A lot of your college football commissioners are on that committee. I think the main message that came out of there from the committee was, in order to play football, that students have to be on campus. And I think we're seeing this kind of across the board, that's one of the main things that has to happen in order for them to be there. And obviously the big question here is, are we going to have football? And if we do, when are we going to play? When are we going to start? So the Pence meeting, I think, and they'll probably have several, is basically just to lay a little bit of groundwork, have a little bit of give and take, I think, frankly, from both groups. So, but guys, and it's certainly for our listeners, guys, this is just one of those things that's going on now that we can't put too much into it. There's so much that can change at this point. And I think the date that you're really looking at here, before we really have an idea of what's going on, is going to be the end of May or the 1st of June. I know Tommy Moffitt, the LSU strength and conditioning coach, said this week that he needs a month basically to get his guys in shape. So I think to really know where we're going at this point, that's the date to look at. And again, what does this mean? It means we either start on time or we start in October or November, or believe it or not, there's a possibility that's been talked about of starting in the spring. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean January, February, March? We're not sure right now. It could be a reduced schedule. Instead of 12 games, we may just end up playing conference games. But I mean, we could speculate from now to the rest of the day. But that's kind of what we're hearing more or less across the board as far as a timetable.
Yeah, I had Keywan Ratliff on a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking. He works in the player personnel department for Florida, and we were talking about how long do you need to get guys physically prepared to play He was saying like 6 to 8 weeks. 4 weeks to me personally, and strength coaches know a lot more than I do. That's pushing it because you got to get the body right to play football, and it takes a while. I understand where these commissioners say we need to have students back on campus because these are student athletes. But if, they're going to have to get on campus way before a regular student. So hopefully they can resolve, because Brent, we've already seen it happen, and it's going to start the domino effect, in my opinion. University of Cincinnati has cut soccer. I just don't know how a lot of these schools that aren't Power Fives and have deep pockets are going to be able to maintain all these other sports.
Well, it's going to be a real challenge. There's no doubt about that. And that's why a group of 5 commissioners asked Mark Emmert, the NCAA president, to relax some of the requirements over the next, even as much as 4 years, because they see this coming, and that's going to be the challenge is, are you going to have to continue to cut sports, which frankly, guys, is the reason that you're seeing more traction now for ideas such as expanding the playoff, playing another opponent on a spring game instead of just having an inter-squad game. There are going to be a lot of different ideas floated around by ADs and school officials as far as how do we make up for lost revenue. And this is a real fear right now and this is why, Jane, I think we'll have a season. Now, it's not going to be the season we're used to, but they need to have a season for the revenue. I know they would like to get fans in the stands, and I get that. But look, the main thing for them is, and the Texas A&M president recently said this, was our main money comes from television. So that's going to be the thing is if you've got fans in the stands or not, if you can get games and get the television revenue for it, that's the main thing they're looking for.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Brent. So let's just say we do get to play football here sometime soon. There has been a lot of talk, as you mentioned earlier, about expanding the playoffs. Tell us a little bit more about what you've heard there.
Brent McMurphy, who works for the stadium, did a survey of college ADs, and for football, out of 130 of them, he got about 112 responses, which frankly is amazing for any survey. And what that survey told him was 88% of those were in favor of expanding the playoffs, anywhere from 8 to, believe it or not, 16. Now, there were double-digit ADs who said that they wanted to expand it to 16, which I know will raise some eyebrows to do it that much. But there's a couple things at play here as far as why you would do it. One would be the additional revenue that you would get from the playoff. But I still think that if you're going to do anything, and I'm not saying they are, but if you were going to do something like 16 or maybe even 12, you would really have to consider, Shane, having the opening round of the playoffs at the home stadium of the top 4 seeds. That would give your fans a break as far as having to travel, because some of them you were talking about traveling to, not many of them obviously, but traveling to a conference championship game and then the playoff games. So revenue is one. The second thing is, again, is accessibility. And I get this. The group of 5 ADs want to have a shot to get into the playoffs. And what we mean by this is, think about a few years ago when UCF was undefeated. If we would have had an 18 playoff at that point, UCF would have been an 8 seed, and they would have had a seat at the table. And that's what these group of 5, and I don't blame them, are looking for is, if you have as much as a 16, you're guaranteed to get in. Now, if you have a 16, that may also mean that you'd have to reduce the regular season schedule. Now, look, we're all just playing around here with the possibilities. There's nothing in stone, but it really is amazing how this virus and the loss of revenue has causing ADs to look at other revenue streams, and expanding the playoffs. It would be one of the quickest way to do it.
Yes, we're speaking with Brent Beaird from First Coast News over in Jacksonville, part of College Sports Today on the Titan Tomorrow Hotline. Second half of the program, don't forget, we'll be joined by Jim Collins, longtime assistant of Steve Spurrier. Brent, it looks like the NCAA is finally going to vote on this one-time transfer rule sometime in May. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it will get done. They were going to do it in April, but it's been pushed back to May. I won't be shocked if it's pushed back even further at this point. But the NCAA Division I Council will meet later this month on the 24th, which is around the corner, to discuss it and to kind of go from there. I do believe that is probably that this is probably going to happen. Again, Shane, the thing we're continuing to see is rulings in favor of the players. And again, as we mentioned before, and this is a sermon on another Sunday, that they are concerned about the players forming some kind of a union, and I think that's why we will continue to see the players get the benefit of these rulings, but again, a one-time transfer. I mean, will this make it the Wild Wild West, or even further than it is, or will this be helpful later on? At this point, that still remains to be seen.
We got a Facebook Live comment here brought to you by Pound Hurt, your preferred business interruption attorneys. Trey says, "Morning, guys. Tell Brent Orlando misses him and his Nuggets on 96.9 The Game."
Tell him I miss them too, and I appreciate that greatly.
Yeah. So there was Chris Lowe wrote an article on ESPN.com, and I kind of looked at it a little bit, but it was talking about how if Steve Spurrier had maybe taken the Alabama job, and if Rich Rod had taken the Alabama job, what were your thoughts about that article?
The Rich Rod was the main point of the article about him at one point, and people may forget this, even with the disaster of him going to Michigan, and Shane, you remember this, when Rich Rod was at West Virginia, he was a hot commodity. And remember, they were beating Pitt away from basically playing in the national championship at that point. But unfortunately, they lost that game, and the season went down the drain at that point. So Rich Rod was offered the Alabama job, and he thought he had a better program at West Virginia than Alabama had at that time. After Mike Shula was fired, and there's probably a lot of truth to that. So obviously he stayed and waited and went to the Michigan job. In the article, it's almost as an afterthought, is mentioned the thought about Steve Spurrier going to Alabama. Now, Spurrier made it clear in the article that, number one, he was not actually offered the job of Mal Moore, the former Alabama athletic director who hired or was instrumental in hiring Nick Saban. Ms. Saban said that Spurrier said he wasn't offered the job, one, and two, that he had a real commitment to South Carolina because they took a chance on him. Spurrier goes there, sets a lot of coaching records at South Carolina to his credit. And the interesting thing that Steve said was, if I go to South Carolina and win championships, it's basically the first time it's ever happened. If I go to Alabama and win a national championship, well, it's just another one. So, but still, this time of year, Shane, we're looking for anything that's interesting. And these what-if articles are always very interesting, aren't they?
No doubt about it. I want to let all the folks know that Jackie Spreads, who's currently on leave, is brought to you by Peachland Dentistry, Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and surrounding areas. Brent, like you said, it's not a whole lot to talk about from team to team, but any interesting things going on up in Tuscaloosa for the time being with the Crimson Tide?
Well, I think basically a couple of weeks ago, one of the big stories was Nick Saban had a press conference and mentioned during the press conference that the players now have Apple Watches where they can monitor their progress during off-season workouts. Now, obviously, they went through the compliance to figure all this out, and could they have them? There's been a little bit of stink raised about that. I think primarily because Saban thought of it first, and the other guys were jealous of it. I think it had a lot to do with that. But at this point, they've still got the watches. From what I understand, Mac Jones was inducted into the prestigious Anderson Society. Only 24 rising seniors get that honor. And again, I know Bryce Young is there, the hotshot freshman from California. But I tell you what, Shane, Jones is a very credible quarterback. He's got a couple of years left. And frankly, if he wins a job this year, I think he'll be one of the more capable quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah, I agree with you there, too. Over in Auburn, Bo Nix apparently was out in California for a little bit training with quarterback coach Jordan Palmer.
Yeah, with Sam Darnold, I think Joe Burrow was in this. Yes, you mentioned Jordan Palmer too. So he learned a lot from being with these guys. It helped him a good bit. Now, Nick's last year wasn't very accurate. Less than 60% of his passes. A lot of that was he was running for his life. Look, here's the number one thing for Auburn. Auburn's got to develop an offensive line. This is similar to the problems at Florida State because, Shane, you know very well, if you don't have a competent offensive line, it's a difficult season. That's what Auburn's going to have to do. They got a freshman, not say freshman, I mean a senior, redshirt senior offensive lineman, Brandon Council, transferred. He was at Akron as a graduate transfer, so that will help them as far as some depth is concerned. But I think Nix is going to be a very, very good quarterback at Auburn, maybe the best in the league before he leaves. He's got that much potential, but right now, the thing they've got to do is rebuild the offensive line around him for him to be successful.
Brent, it seems like every time you read something about the Georgia Bulldogs, they got the number one recruiting class. They're bringing in they keeps getting all these commitments. What's going on up in Athens?
Martin Simmons had an interesting tweet this week, which sums up their recruiting. He said Georgia just landed the number one recruiting class, and I don't see a single position on the roster where a true freshman is an obvious favorite to beat someone out. So that tells you about what they have done over the last few weeks and months, which is very impressive. Their quarterback, five-star 2021, Brock Vandengriff, also is considered one of the better quarterbacks in his class. So they're going to be set, frankly, quarterback. Now they've got Jamie Newman coming in, obviously, so they had to restock at quarterback. But, I mean, your reality here, Shane, is, again, they're very talented. They've got a lot to do offensively to get up to par, as we mentioned, with Newman and new coaches. But defensively, they were number one defensively last year in rush defense and scoring defense. Their defense is going to be keeping them in a lot of games until the offense catches up.
Yeah, the Keys Grill and Piano Bar, nestled in beautiful Celebration Point and still open for takeout and delivery. Call them for takeout, and they offer delivery services through Grubhub, Uber Eats, and Bite Squad. Learn more about them at keysgainesville.com. Brent, a few more minutes. I know you got some good nuggets for us out there. What you got?
I'm just going to run through some teams real quick. Former Kentucky redshirt junior quarterback Walker Wood has transferred to McNeese State. if you're kind of wondering where he ended up. I thought this was very interesting. Some ink has been given to Max Johnson, the LSU freshman quarterback. Now, Miles Brennan is going to be the guy at LSU. That's pretty clear. But Max Johnson, they really think a lot of him in a lot of ways. What I didn't know about Max, or had forgotten, Shane, is Max Johnson is the son of Super Bowl winning quarterback Brad Johnson. So I figure you probably know Brad anyway, but that's an interesting note to think about where they're going to be going there at that time. Now, one thing we did have a few days ago, Ole Miss has suspended academics and athletics through August the 1st. So again, they'll have to be, if obviously the football team comes back, they'll have to be looking at that. At South Carolina, Summy Carley, who's an offensive lineman, has entered the transfer portal, played in 12 games last year, mainly special teams at that. Tennessee's also had a verbal commitment from three-star tight end Rock Taylor. He was looking at Arkansas, South Carolina, and Georgia Tech. So even though we don't have football, recruiting is still going on because a lot of these athletes are still giving a verbal commitment to folks. But Shane, my friend, as always, we're covering this stuff and watching it virtually 24 hours a day to see what's going on, and as anxious as anyone as we get closer to making the decision on the coming season.
No doubt about it. Well, Brent, we appreciate your time. Be safe over there in Jax. You can follow Brent at Brent Beaird on Twitter, and we'll talk to you soon, buddy. Take care.
Look forward to it, pal. Take care. Thank you.
All right. That was Brent Beaird. Join us on the Titan Tomorrow hotline. We're going to take a quick time out here. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Jim Collins, longtime assistant of Coach Steve Spurrier, linebacker coach here at the University of Florida. You're watching and listening to Podup with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. We'll be right back.
Time out! Time out! Hey! Time out! Time out! Time out! Here we go. Good.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills.
Let's give them something to cheer for now.
Our Gridiron sponsors are Crime Prevention Security, small enough to serve you, large enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Peachland Dentistry, Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and surrounding areas. Area Rug Masters, your #1 choice for rug cleaning. And Pound Hurt, preferred personal injury attorneys.
Our touchdown sponsors are Gator BTW, Campus USA Credit Union, Celebration Point Town Center, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, The Keys Grill and Piano Bar, UF Mover Guys, The Digital Mortgage Guy, Adams Ribs, Cloud9 Spa, Cold Stone Creamery, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Center State Bank.
If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, podupwithshane.com, and click on the Advertise button or call Freddie Wiebe at 352-284-3733.
Again, thank you for all the great businesses that support the show. Please remember, if you like what we are doing here, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
He's looking, still looking. He's going for the end zone. He's got a touchdown.
Well, welcome back to Podup with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. We're going to be joined now on the Titan Tomorrow hotline. Former Gator linebacker coach, longtime assistant of Steve Spurrier, Coach Jim Collins. Coach, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing well, Shane. I apologize for the glitch on the technology there. I had you on Zoom.
I'm right there with you. This is only our second or third day of trying that, and it's a little over my head. But, hey, we had a lot of people that want to listen to Jim Collins, and we're excited to have you on the program.
Well, thanks, Shane. You know, the interesting thing about this technology is I've been on tons of Zoom meetings because of what I do up here right now. So it's interesting. That's the first time that it's ever failed with me. But I'm happy to be with you. I still I miss all you guys. Miss seeing Coach Spurrier and all of you. So I'm happy to be with you this morning.
Great. Well, Coach, let's talk about it. You graduated from Elon College.
Yeah.
What made you want to be a football coach?
Shane, that's an interesting question. I knew from the time I was about 13 years old that I wanted to do something related to athletics, because I wasn't very good at anything else. My dad and my brother could fix absolutely everything. I couldn't fix anything. So I knew very quickly that I was not going to be any good with my hands mechanically. So I decided that I wanted to be a ball coach. I actually thought I would be a baseball coach to begin with, because I love playing baseball, played all the way up to American Legion ball, and actually started playing my freshman year in college until the head football coach said, "Hey, you'll show up for spring practice or you won't have a scholarship anymore." So it was something I wanted to do forever. And the fortunate thing, Shane, is I did it for a long, long time. And really, you hear this said a lot. I've never really worked a day in my life, to be honest with you.
Right. Well, the whole coaching profession is about relationships. And tell everybody how you started your relationship with Coach Spurrier. Where did it start?
Well, it's actually started back in the early '80s when he was an assistant at Duke. We had met a couple of times there. We really not anything real relationship or anything like that. But in Steve Sloan, I was working for Steve Sloan here at Duke University, and he decided to become the athletic director at the University of Alabama. And Tom Butters, who was the athletic director here at that time, hired Coach Spurrier to be the head football coach. We'd been pretty decent on defense, so Coach Spurrier came in and retained me. Thank God that he did. And it was myself and Bob Sanders, who was also another former Gator coach. And if you're looking for a guest somewhere down the road, Bob would be a good one to have on also, Shane. But that's how the relationship started in 1987. And it's continued for the whatever the number of years. That's 30-some years now. So it was a great day the day he came in and offered me a job.
Yeah, well, let's fast forward to 1990 when you guys, when he was hired here at Florida, he brought you along. And what were your thoughts, coming to a program like the University of Florida, having coached smaller type schools, being there at Duke? Was there the excitement level there? Was there a tremendous amount of pressure on you guys? How was it when you went into your office the first day here on campus?
That's an interesting question, because coming from the ACC and especially being at Duke, where Duke had never won, even though we had won the ACC championship or tied for it in 1989, just before we came to Florida. There were a lot of people that wanted to know why Coach Spurrier was bringing all these Duke coaches that had never coached in the SEC. I hear that all the time. And it continues to be that way in the SEC. But we were excited to be there, obviously. We were excited to coach that level of player and excited to be in the SEC at that point in time. And it was a challenge. I'll be honest with you. There was not any pressure or anything like that because, Shane, let's face it, we were coming to a program that had never won an SEC championship. So right. Our challenge was not the pressure of just being there. Our challenge was to come in and take the program where it should be after all these years. So it was a welcome challenge to say the least.
Yeah, well, we come in here, obviously 1990 was y'all's first year. We had some really good teams that laid the foundation for the national championship teams. Talk a little bit about that 1996 team that led by your group of guys, by James Bates, crazy James Bates. There are some tremendous athletes at your position, but talk a little bit about that linebacking core that you had in 96.
Well, let me say this first. Let's go back to 1990, Shane. You were a vital part of us having the success that we had early, and I think we always need to address that. And I read my bio, and it refers to having 6 SEC championships, but I'm gonna go on Coach Spurrier's wagon, and I'm gonna say we had 7.
I agree. I agree with that.
The 1990 team was the SEC champions. I know you can't say that because you're in the public eye and all that, but you did just say it, and we were the champions. But to get back to the 96 team, that was an unbelievable group of guys with James Bates and with obviously Javon Curse and Mike Peterson, and just outstanding players. And of that group, Johnny Rutledge eventually came into that group down the road, and then they eventually, Johnny and Javon and Mike Peterson, became 3 of the top 51 picks in the draft in 1998. How about that?
Wow.
And so that was an excellent group. They were that team, Shane, took on, and all of our teams through the years have taken on Coach Spurrier's personality, and as you know, because you're very close with Coach, and his persona that he brings just melts into a team, and that team was a very close team with Lawrence Wright, and obviously we had the Heisman Trophy winner in Danny Werfel, and the leadership of that group. It was just a great mesh at that time, and just a fun group to coach. And Bobby Stoops was new to our staff at that point in time, and we just had a great mesh. It was the right place at the right time, and we got a little bit fortunate, as Coach Spurrier always says, and we got the opportunity to play Florida State in the Sugar Bowl for the national championship, thanks to some other folks out there.
Absolutely. We got a text here on the Titan MR hotline for Coach Jim Collins. It comes from Larry. It's kind of a 2-part question. He wants to know, what was your area to recruit while you were at Florida? And the second part of the text is, who was the one player that you were responsible for recruiting that kept you up at night, sleepless nights, hoping he would sign with the Gators?
Well, my primary area was Central Florida. I had from Daytona Beach over to Polk County in that area. The guy that kept me up the most, I haven't thought about this in a long time, to be honest with you. I'll tell you an interesting story, though, and one that'll probably get me in trouble somewhere down the road. But I saw a picture this morning on Facebook of Derek Chambers from high school. And Derek, of course, now works at Gator Boosters. But Derek was actually committed to the University of Tennessee, but took a visit to the University of Florida. And then after his visit to Florida, decided that he wanted to come to Florida, but we didn't want to go through the re-recruitment of all that. So I told Derek, I said, don't tell Tennessee anything. Just get up on signing day and sign with us, and it'll be over, and you don't have to listen to all that. And that's exactly what he did. So that was an interesting scenario that we went through. But, the thing is, Shane, I was also the recruiting coordinator for about 8 years, from 95 to all the way through the 2001 season. So there were some interesting things happening during that time.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We're speaking with Coach Jim Collins on the Titan MR hotline. We got a Facebook Live comment brought to you by Pound Hurt, your preferred business interruption attorneys. It comes from a guy Coach Bam Hardman. He says, Coach Collins is the reason why I'm a Gator and I'm a football coach now. So Coach Bam Hardman's listening to you right now, Coach.
Well, Bam, that was an interesting scenario also. And that was Bam and Lido and Jabbar Gaffney were all in Jacksonville at that point in time, and Steve Spurrier Jr. had been recruiting all 3 of them, and that's when Steve Jr. went to went to Oklahoma with Bobby Stoops when Bobby left to take the Oklahoma job, and I took over recruiting those guys. So that was a great time. Had a lot of fun recruiting Bam, and I love Bam. Bam is one of my all-time favorites. No doubt we stay in touch with each other. Bam, love you, buddy.
We got a text here from Daryl on the Titan MR text line. He says, my cousin coaches high school baseball at Williams in Burlington. Could you ask Coach Collins, does he still follow Elon, and does he still keep up with NASCAR?
The answer to that is I do follow Elon. Actually, Duke plays Elon this fall as we move through that, and we've played him a couple of times since in my time here at Duke. And as far as the NASCAR question, yes, I do still follow NASCAR. I miss the racing out there right now. Of course, we miss all of our sports on television and being able to attend those. And yeah, I do follow it.
We got another Facebook Live comment here brought to you by Pound Hurt, your preferred business interruption attorneys. And Todd wants to know, Coach Collins, who is your favorite NASCAR driver?
I've been very fortunate that I've been to a lot of NASCAR races and I've met a lot of people. So I don't really have a favorite driver. I have people that I pull against sometimes. So I would rather not say who those are, but most people can figure that out. Derek Cope won the 1990 Daytona 500, and through a personal friend, I have become friends with Derek. So Derek is a very good friend of mine, and of course he's retired right now. He's the general manager for one of the teams. So really don't have a favorite, just enjoy watching.
Coach, who would you say in your 12 years here at the University of Florida, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I guess I'm going to, what would you say your best group of linebackers in your 12 years that you had here? Who would it be?
Well, all assembled together.
Well, I guess you would say like what year, because you coached so many great ones over the 12 years. I guess like which team do you think had the best results from your group that you coached that year?
Probably Shane, probably that streak through 96, 97, 98. And you might even bring the 95 crew in there with Dexter Daniels and that group. So I would say that era through there with Javon and with Mike Peterson and with Bates and Dwayne Thomas and Johnny Rutledge and that was just an outstanding group all the way through there. And I was fortunate. You go back even into the early years, Shane, and you look at the Tim Paulks of the world and the Carlton Miles, and it's so good. I'm friends with Carlton on Facebook, and I keep up with him. And that era, Shane, of Florida football is we're all so close in the things that we do, and I'm probably friends with 200 former Gator players on Facebook, and I try to keep up with all of them. And but that's I was very fortunate. I had a lot of good players during that time.
Coach, you went on with to the Redskins with Coach Spurrier. What would you say the biggest difference coaching linebackers at the professional level compared to the collegiate level?
Well, number one, it's your job, Shane, and you were there with us, and we had an outstanding group of linebackers there also. We had LeVar Arrington, we had Jesse Armstead, we had Jeremiah Trotter, we had Antonio Pierce, who went on to be a big star with the Giants. So that entire group was with us. And Antonio Pierce could not even start for us at that time. And as you well know, our first year there, we were fifth in the league on defense with Marvin Lewis as the coordinator at that time. So I think the big thing is that you learn to listen to guys. I tell this story to a lot of people, especially young coaches, because sometimes we get to the point where we think we know it all as coaches, and we don't listen to ideas from players. Well, Jesse Armstead was a 12-year vet and a 5 or 6 time All-Pro at that point in time. So Jesse had the work ethic, Shane, that he had to know on Tuesday night what the game plan was before he would come to work on Wednesday. I don't even know if you know this. So between George and I, George Edwards and I, we would make sure that he would either come over on Tuesday night to get the game plan, or we faxed it to him on Tuesday night. So when he came to work on Wednesday, he already knew what was expected of him. So a true pro. So he was a fun guy to coach, and I learned through that the communication with a player is so vitally important.
We're speaking with Jim Collins. You can follow him on Twitter at Collins Coach. We got a text here on the Titan MRI text line from Julie. Julie wants to know, Coach Collins, what was your favorite moment as a Gator football coach?
Well, obviously the national championship has to be ranked very high up there. And Shane, people ask me a lot about maybe the biggest game that we probably played while we were there, and there's a couple of those. I think probably the win at Alabama in 1990 was as big as any of them. I'll also go to the 91 Florida State game that may have been the most physical football game that I've ever coached in. And I'm sure you'll remember Casey Weldon and the things that Darren Nickel and the way our defensive line played that day. But there's so many highlights through those 12 years. I mean, when you win 122 football games in 12 years, there's lots and lots of highlights.
No doubt about it. Coach, you coached a long time, but mostly I want to say you've been an assistant under Steve Spurrier or David Cutcliffe. And I have a lot of respect for Cutcliffe. I liked him a lot when he was at Ole Miss. I think he's done wonderful things at Duke. What are some of the similarities and differences between those two guys?
Well, I think the major difference, if there is, and you know, the key, and let me back up. I'm not going to do a dip. I think the key thing with both of them is they are so competitive. Coach Spurrier would rather beat you on the golf course. As you know, you've played many rounds of golf with him, and his just competitive nature with everything that he does, and it just melts over into everybody that's involved in the organization. And Cut is the same way. Cut's a very, very competitive person, a very intense person, and I think the major difference between them is Cut is very, very intense. Coach is too. Coach Spurrier is too, but in a different way, and that's hard to explain unless you've been around both of them.
Yeah. So, Coach, you went and you were assistant for the Orlando Apollos. I know that didn't end very well. Did you enjoy that experience? And then let everybody know what you're doing these days.
Shana, I did enjoy the Apollo experience, and it's a shame that it ended the way that it did, and unfortunately, the XFL has met the same fate with the way the economy's gone, and of course the virus that's out there. But we had a lot of challenges with the Apollos, but they were challenges that were fun to deal with, living in different hotels in different cities and getting on the bus or in a car every day and going to Camden County, Georgia to practice. And but I'll tell you, Shane, those things probably brought our team closer together. And it was fun to be back with Coach Spurrier and Coach Sanders and around Lido and Jimmy Ray Stevens and Willie Jackson and all the people and David Reeves. I'm sure I've left somebody out of that group, but it was just a fun group to be around, because there's nothing like coaching, Shane, when you're coaching with people that you want to be around and that you enjoy seeing every day. And that made the experience very worthwhile. Shane, right now I'm actually not doing a whole lot. I am doing some analyst work for Duke, so I evaluate the opponent's defense and give a report to the offensive staff. So whatever Coach Cutt wants me to do, I kind of do right now.
Well, talk about Gavin Spurrier, Coach's grandson, is a walk-on quarterback there. That's got to be kind of cool to see that Spurrier on the back of a jersey for Bubba and for Coach Spurrier there at Duke.
Well, it is, and Gavin is such a great kid. I mean, he's absolutely a pleasure to see every day with a smile on his face. He's so much like Steve Jr. When he walks in the room, it's like Steve Jr.'s walking in the room. It's unreal, and you know, his one of the other triplets is here also.
Yeah,
running cross country, and so the two of them are here together, and he is an absolute pleasure to see every day. Of course, I haven't seen him in a couple months now with what we have going on in our world right now.
Yeah, it's crazy. Coach, last thing for you. I ask all the former players, and obviously coaches have great stories, but people love to hear some Steve Spurrier head ball coach stories. You got a good one for us?
Well, there's lots of them, Shane, and as you know, and I love, as you know, I love Coach Spurrier, and he is, you know, I feel like we're family together. So, but I think the thing I remember most is, if you remember in the 90s, we went to LSU, number one in the country, and LSU beat us that year. This was 97, I think, 97 or so. And we had a guy, they had a guy by the name of, I can't even remember the defensive coordinator's name at LSU at that point in time. But anyway, he went around the country telling everybody how to stop the Gators. And the next year when we got ready to play LSU, Coach Spurrier stood up in front of the team on Monday of that week and told the team, he said, there's a guy at defensive coordinator at LSU that thinks he knows how to stop us, and I think we can put 50 on them this week. And that next Saturday we did, Shane. So to me, that is a great story about Coach and his level and his competitive nature.
No doubt about it. Well, Coach Collins, we really do appreciate you joining the program. Be safe, and we'll talk to you soon, bud.
Shane, thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on. And let me close with Go Gators. And let me do one thing for Ed Chester. Ed Chester sent me a message this morning, and this is for Ed Chester. Stay off my bags.
All right, Coach. Yeah, Ed
you'll have to explain that, Shane, with Member County Fair.
Oh yeah.
So you'll have to explain that one to the fans out there. Go Gators. Have a great day, Shane.
All right, Coach. Take care. That was Jim Collins joining us on the Titan MR hotline. Tomorrow's program, we got a great program lined up for you tomorrow. We got Marty Paulman from the Prep Zone joining us, talk a little high school sports and other things. But we're going to have Florida women's soccer coach Becky Burley will join the program. So you'll make sure you need to tune in for that. That's going to be a wrap for today. You've been watching and listening to Podup with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Be safe. Take care.